Good morning to everybody.
Good morning.
1, 2, 3. Online we have one person. One person or 3 persons? 4.
It's me, Lama, Gabby.
Oh.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are
Good
you?
morning. I'm doing well, thank you.
Also, Lama, there's a gentleman, and maybe Joyce and Doss both are listening, McDavid. They live in San Antonio, but they have actually been very interested in Buddhism and have for many, many, many years in Europe, and now they're here in San Antonio. They're also interested in some related spiritual traditions and spiritual paths. Wonderful, great folks and great to have Das and Joyce as well. And besides Gabby, I'm not sure who the other phone call is. Oh, there's Das Lama La. He just let his picture show. He's waving.
It's good to see your picture. Good to see your face.
Hi, how are you? Good to see you.
How are you, sir?
Very good.
You're welcome to the class.
Thank you.
Is it first time you are attending a class or listening to the class?
Well, I've been listening for several weeks.
Oh, okay. You are liking it?
Very good.
Good to know that.
Lama La, interesting about Das, it just so happens that many times he and his wife have received the Kala Chakra initiation and other very high, wonderful initiations when they've been living in different parts of the world. And, you know, Das might want to fill you in on that a little bit. It's got they have a great background.
Oh,
We were very lucky. We were taught by Geshe Shenpin, you know, who was the Gandhin Tripa.
oh, okay. Wow.
And our first teacher was Geshe Jampa Lodrov. It was in Switzerland. And anyway, so but Song Rinpoche. And so we were lucky enough to have some of the greatest teachers while they were still around. The Jetson Dapa Rinpoche. And
Oh,
we were so lucky.
You received teaching from Zong Rinpoche, you said?
Yes.
He's from Gandhin. He already passed away a long time ago. He's a very,
Yes, he was an old man with a beard.
yes, yes. He's a great
He
master.
knew everything, though. He was wonderful.
Yes, yes. He's highly, highly respected and well-known scholar and as well as practitioner. We can say somebody with the realization as well.
Yes, we were so fortunate to have all those teachers.
It is very fortunate for you to have received teaching from him, especially master like him. He's not just scholar, but he's a practitioner, very, very high-level practitioner. He's said to be someone who has developed realization as well. He's a very high-level tantric practitioner as well, not just Sutta. So I'm glad you had a strong connection with the great masters like Zohar Rinpoche as well.
We were very fortunate.
It is, yeah. Today we cannot find master like that.
We have you.
You will see monk like me talking. Many masters really that we had met and received teaching. But
We're very lucky to have you here.
hopefully in the future we will have more great masters like Zong Rinpoche and Ling Rinpoche, Tian Rinpoche, and many other also masters that we had when we were young at the monastery. Yeah. So they all are gone, unfortunately.
Oh, gone. Some of them have been reborn, so we have to let them grow up.
Zong Rinpoche's reincarnation, I think he almost finishing his studies. He's doing so well. Some reincarnation don't do so well, but he's doing really good, well in his study. Not just in terms of study, but in terms of his conduct as well, the ethic. He's seen as a wonderful reincarnation of Zong Rinpoche, and monks, monasteries, they are very hopeful for him to become a great master like his previous Zong Rinpoche. I think he will become like him, his previous one as well. And yes, we had many other incarnations as well. We still have, and some are doing okay, some not doing so well. So it depends, I guess. It depends on many situations. Anyway, you are welcome, sir.
Thank you.
To hear from you. Good to know all this information. Anyway, so what we are talking. What's William Gallagher? What's his William Gallagher.
William
Gallagher.
Gallagher.
Yes.
Are you there, William Gallagher? Oh, okay. Yeah, I see.
Hi.
You look like a yogi. You have a long hair, long beard. Facial look facial look also look like a yogi or tantric practitioner. Are you?
A little bit. No. Not really.
You've been studying Buddhism for a long time or something?
Yeah.
So are you happy with the teaching? It's kind of like a convincing or something you think reliable, something that really makes sense, no contradiction, not applicable in this modern time.
I would say more or less yes to all those things. Yeah, that's what I like about it. The applicability of the teachings.
I think it's still applicable in our modern life or modern time for modern people.
Yeah.
People who are so busy every day, walking. I see. That's good. If you sounds like you have been studying quite a long time, but you still have that interest and faith and conviction. I think in its validity and authenticity. All right. Anyway, thank you. So we study. We talk a little bit about. I've been. So as per his always guidance to when we talk about Buddhism, we are encouraged to talk about Buddhist view as well, Buddhist view and Buddhist conduct. So entire Buddhist teaching can be summarized into these two point or statement: Buddhist view and Buddhist conduct. So among the two, first thing that is important for us to understand is Buddhist view. Actually, Buddhist view, if we can shape our view, then we can shape our conduct, right? Way of life, how we live, how we behave, how we treat others, how we see others, and what is the right path, what is wrong, or which direction are we taking? Is it correct or is it wrong? It needs modification? It needs to be changed or take a different direction, or we just want to go on the direction being taken by the world in general, or you want to have some changes in your way towards your final destination, or say happiness or peace for long term, or real peace. Either we go by the direction taken by the world, or we have to be able to find our own way. Is it right? You can see there are people who are being led by the direction taken by the world, or in kind of impulse as well. They don't know what direction they need to take, which is good for them in the long run. So they just follow the direction being taken by the world in general. But there are people who are not happy with that, who are not satisfied with that, who doesn't see it is the right direction that the world is heading, and I need to take a different direction, take a different path that I believe that can take me to the true happiness or and peace. So, there are also great masters, great thinker, philosopher, scholars who can change the direction of the world as well, right? What do you think? Yeah, you have to be a highly scholar and practitioner and genius or wisdom, people with high level wisdom, and they can maybe change the direction taken by the world, or at least shape the direction as to some extent. For that, that those people need to have a far-sighted view and wisdom in terms of, in order to understand the path, which path can take in the people in general towards the total peace, harmony, and lasting happiness, right? So we are trying. So as a Buddhist, we are trying. We believe that Buddha's path taught by Buddha is the long. It can lead us to the ultimate happiness and peace. And the path that taken by the direction taken by the world, or path chosen by the world in general, is okay for people who believe in just only this one life to live, but not for those who even not for those who kind of thinks or understand to some extent, at least, that this is life. It's not about one life. It's not that one life. I mean, it's not the one life is not the end of life. The life still continues. We believe in reincarnation, rebirth, continuous rebirth, and future life, and so forth. So, for all of that, we need to have a path that can establish the resource for us to enjoy happiness, not only during this lifetime, but also in the future lifetime, or for the future lifetime. That makes sense. So that's why Buddha said that. Or this Indian master Nagarjuna, he said to the he also paid homage to the Buddha, saying that "Kangi tuzen yesume," means out of your compassion. He paid homage to Buddha. "Kangi tuzen yesume tawatanji pandasi." In order to, out of your compassion to the world, to the sense, for the sentient being, in order to eliminate all the wrong view. You taught the sublime teaching. Gautam tells us, I bowed to you because of that. So because he understands that all the source of our problem is the wrong view. If we cannot correct our view, then we cannot, we won't understand how to choose the right path or correct path. So that's why Buddha taught his teaching that explains the correct view and that explains the distinction between correct and wrong view. Accordingly, correct path and wrong path. And so but also at the same time, he taught different level of correct view, I think, different levels of correct view that based on the mental capacity of the students, that levels of view that his students can understand according to their mental capacity. And also he taught most supreme view, ultimate view to those who are highly intelligent, who would understand that it is the correct view. It is totally making sense. It does accord with the actual reality of the ground reality. It does accord with the ground reality or things, reality of things, or reality of body, reality of ourself or mind. So anyway, any question you have? Any question you have that I've been talking last 2 days? If you have, then you can ask me question. If not, then I will see if I can talk something about what you. Yeah. No, I mean, I'll go a little bit about the view. And so, as a Buddhist, of course, let me take a look at the watch. It's 11:36, so I have 1 hour and a half to talk. How do I start? I think it's good to, maybe I should just go back a little bit and then start it down. In general, we say, I was actually talking mainly about the true truth, the conventional truth and ultimate truth. Like we in the society, in the world, it is conventional truth, the ultimate truth is actually based on another way of conventional truth, the ultimate truth. Another way of saying conventional truth, the ultimate truth is like appearance and reality. Nangsu nizu. Nangsu means appearance of the situation, how things appears to be, how self appears to be, how our mind appears to be, how everything that we happens to see or experience happens appears to be. So as an ordinary being, we take that as a reality. But even in the ordinary sense, in certain appearance of things or anything, we can understand that as appearance. It's not real. It's just a mere appearance, but not the appearance of the reality. But a lot of people, or most of the people, are being fooled by the outer appearance of self, appearance of things, outer appearance, being fooled or being deceived, or being mistaken by outer appearance of things, and then according to, because of that, we we fail to understand that reality of that reality that underlies within underlies within that outer appearance. So and then accordingly we make wrong judgment. We develop incorrect understanding of that the actual reality of that underlies that appearance. So then accordingly we take wrong action, and then that somehow definitely ends to a wrong result, meaning unsuffering, or things that happens is unwanted things happens, unexpected thing happens, or leads to suffering, or leads to problem. So Buddhist philosophy, when they talk of Buddhist view or Buddhist philosophy, they're talking about understanding that appearance of self, appearance of things does not accord with the actual reality. So we can also think of many levels of appearance as well, I think, and many levels of reality as well. So it's quite complicated. But that's why people in general, we are easily fooled by appearance, outer appearance. That appearance is very alluring. Alluring? I don't know the right word. Huh?
It can be.
Yeah. So we are being mistaken in terms of understanding the reality, and we make mistake. So correct view means correct view in terms of understanding reality. Many correct view in terms of so many things, I think. In terms of understanding reality of self, reality of things, as well as correct review in terms of understanding what is the actual cause of our happiness, what is the actual cause of our suffering as well. And also correct view in terms of so many other things that we can talk about. Say, you know, thinking, not understanding or not reflecting deep enough in understanding the self and things, everything as impermanent. Because of that, although to some extent, we kind of intellectually know that things are impermanent, but we have, due to lack of as kind of permanently existence or permanent. So because of that, then we tend to get more attached to so many things. Of course, we can have attachment, but attachment to the extent that causes us more problem. It can cause us little problem that we can tolerate, but sometimes it causes us more problem that we cannot even tolerate. So that's why, in order to understand all these things, Buddha taught two truth and four noble truth. So, say for example, the four noble truth, the first two truth is talking about how we suffer and why we suffer, causes, condition by which we suffer, and of course, when we talk about suffering, there are three types of suffering in general. Mostly three types of sufferings are mentioned, and suffering of such as suffering of change, and pervasive suffering. But the first suffering of change, is seen as suffering, understood as suffering by everybody, not just by human being, but by even animals as well. They don't want to experience that suffering because it's very obvious suffering. But so it, and as a human being, it's not a big deal. It is, of course, we would understand that nobody would want to experience that suffering. That's why we are working so hard to avoid that kind of suffering. But so many problems we experience today that in our everyday life, as an individual, as a society, as a world, due to lack of understanding the second two suffering, the suffering of change and pervasive suffering. Due to lack of understanding the suffering of change as suffering, also due to lack of understanding suffering of pervasive suffering as suffering, we experience so much suffering. Does it make sense? So because it is, but in general, it is said that some people who are thinker, like a yogi or practitioner or philosopher, some serious practitioner, they can understand to some extent, intellectually at least, that suffering of change is also suffering. And that's why even the non-Buddhist people, non-Buddhist practitioners, they also understand suffering of change as suffering. That's why they don't get attached to so many things that we are attached to, because they understand they are suffering of change, and somehow they become the source of suffering, or they they become the source of suffering, or they happens to bring more suffering. That's why they develop detachment towards suffering of towards the things and objects that, and then name, fame, position, wealth, all this power, all that. They see understood that they understand that they are kind of, although seem to be the source of happiness, but in reality, indirectly, they all become the source of suffering. So they don't get attached to these things, and they all even don't get attached to all the physical comfort that for which we are working so hard all our life, and gets too attached to it. And and also in the process of collecting all these things, we have to develop so many negative emotion, even fight to so many people as well. so they, so these in Buddhist, non-Buddhist practitioner also understand that these are source of suffering, so they don't get attached to it. But they also, according to Buddhist philosophy, but those even non-Buddhist practitioners fail to understand the third level of suffering, pervasive suffering, because it requires quite a bit of thinking and understanding. So they don't, although they engage into serious kind of meditation, and also kind of very challenging or difficult, although they practice practice that involves kind of hardship and difficulties, but those practices cannot help them, free from this cyclic existence in general. They still tend to remain within the cycle of birth, age, and death. So according to Buddhist teaching or Buddha's teaching, in order to free yourself from the suffering, or not just suffering from the suffering of suffering and suffering of change, you have to free yourself from the suffering of pervasive suffering. Pervasive suffering, when we, of course, suffering of suffering and change of suffering, you know that, wealth, name, fame, position, everything, good company, food, health, everything that exists in the universe in general, we can say it's a source of suffering. Source of suffering indirectly. Is it difficult for us to understand that? Does it make sense? It makes sense, right? It is, of course, although it seemed to be, source of happiness. Of course, it does. Of course, Buddhist philosophy admits that they can bring, of course, happiness, but that is temporary happiness. That's not a reliable happiness or reliable satisfaction. It's somehow, no matter how much you have it, it still creates dissatisfaction. You will never experience total satisfaction out of it, out of indulging all these things. So that's why it is seen as suffering of change. And pervasive suffering refers to our physical contaminated 5 aggregates. We count 5, we say 5 aggregates, but actually you can say it's a body and mind. If you make it short, body and mind. In this body and mind, mind that is deluded mind, is all is referred to as pervasive suffering. Pervasive suffering in the sense it is pervaded. This form of suffering, the third level of the form of suffering, is pervaded, means pervaded to all beings residing within the cyclic existence. It is being possessed, in other words, by all sentient beings, all living beings. So due to which all living beings, no matter how comfortable they are seemingly based on outer appearance, but they all go through the basic fundamental suffering. Because of being, because of having this contaminated body and mind. Although that body and mind could be so many different types, but it is still a mind. Deluded mind is still a contaminated body, because that is which is subject to change, disintegrate, age, subject to death, and then again, continuation of the rebirth, and have to go through the continuous rebirth. So that's why. So when we are talking about renunciation that we will discuss, we are talking about renunciation, having to developing the renunciation to that form of suffering. Although spiritual practitioner, a lot of spiritual, they cannot be detached with the suffering of change, not to mention pervasive suffering. So-called spirit, they fail to be detached to the suffering of change and pervasive suffering, because of which they somehow, although seemingly or based on outer appearance, they seem to be holy and all that, but in reality, they still go through these fundamental sufferings of entire living beings, such suffering of birth, suffering of age, suffering of sickness, suffering of death. they cannot be freed from this fundamental basic suffering and rebirth that is imposed by negative karma and negative emotion. So that's why Buddha said that suffering is to be recognized. He first truth, this is truth. This is the truth of suffering. Then he says suffering is to be recognized. When he says suffering is to be recognized, that doesn't mean that. Of course, he knows suffering can be recognized by everybody, all living, including even insects. They can see, you can see, they can understand. They don't want that suffering of suffering. But when the Buddha says suffering is to be recognized or is to be identified, means he is referring to our suffering of change, especially referring to our suffering known as pervasive suffering, the third level of suffering. That's what he is referring to. Although, of course, for as an ordinary being, as long as we don't experience suffering, then we are quite happy with that. We don't worry about suffering of change, suffering and pervasive suffering. Don't you think we all do that?
I think so.
We are just happy with the suffering of change. We are happy with. We are working for that. We are, all our life we are collecting the suffering of change. Of course, we cannot be free ourselves from pervasive suffering. But in addition to that, we are working on accumulating the suffering of change. The source of suffering of change, maybe it's a better way to say. Thinking somehow we get the information or teaching or intellect, because of which we intellectually understand that, but we really don't get it. We really don't get it, because that's why we cannot be attached to this suffering of change, because of which we don't want to renounce this suffering of change. That's why we don't develop the renunciation toward that suffering of change. Of course, not to mention pervasive suffering. But if you look at our body, think about it, it takes so much maintenance, don't you think? Everything we have, for me, I always think of maintenance. It's just making me sick. Maintaining is so challenging, so difficult. It's an everyday thing. Everything you have needs to be maintained. And that takes all your time, all your energy, is to be maintained. Because otherwise you won't have it too long. Something would happen to this. Something will, there will be changes that you don't want to see, because you want everything remain intact. And that is against the reality. That is against the reality. Nothing remains intact. Things are subject to change, including everything, our relationship, our thinking, our perspective, our, everything we own are subject to change. Position, name, fame, our look, how much beautiful or handsome you are, but they are subject to change. So I myself look at mirror, I just looking very old than 10 years ago, 10 years before. So when I come to class, I have to shave myself, make myself look okay, at least to what do you call it, presentable. So it's just this is a gross change that we can see, but that still does not does not impact much. It still cannot impact our mind to the extent that okay, things are very much momentarily existence and a very transient nature, and that would make us at least think that okay, cannot rely on it too long. I cannot be proud of having what I have, or being who I am, because everything changes. So if we have these things, and that will, if we really develop, then it will kind of crush your ego. You will be more humble and will practice more humility. And that is also, that actually in a ways people would, most of people I think would be happy with you if you do that. But we cannot do that also. We, still we want to maintain our ego. But anyway, so this is suffering, and then suffering of change, pervasive. So that's why Buddha, when we say, that's why Buddha says suffering of change. Suffering is to be recognized. That's this is what he said in relation to the first truth that he said, the truth of suffering. Then the second truth, truth of the origin of suffering, and then our negative emotion and negative karma. We said that, as you know, our suffering is caused by our negative karma of our negative speech, negative karma such as negative speech and negative action. And those are being caused by negative emotion. So meaning our negative affective emotion and affective negative karma are the source of our suffering. So then what in relation to that truth, the second truth, the truth of the origin of suffering, he says it is to be eliminated. Suffering of the truth of the origin of suffering is to be eliminated. It is eliminated means if you want to be free from suffering, you have to eliminate these things. These are object to be eliminated, object to be abandoned. But what we do, we cherish them. we nourish them, we cherish them. We see them as even we see them as what do you call that? Like a protection, we cannot live without these things. I remember Geshe Trungpa once said that if we don't have this negative emotion, we will be so lonely. We won't be able to, we will be very bored, he said that. So all the emotion keeps us so busy. In fulfilling all this emotion, that keeps us so busy. Maybe it's in a way it's a good thing to have. So if you look at ourselves sometime and look at others, that people are going so crazy about so many little things, you can laugh at yourself and laugh at the things that people do. But what you can say, but you cannot laugh on their face, you will be trouble. you can get beat up, So you have, but if you think and see, then this is reality. This is what Buddha say. And then then third truth is, and then Buddha is saying that last truth, he's saying that this, but don't be sad, don't be depressed. It's okay. There is a way out of it. So that's what he says. This truth of suffering can be eliminated by eliminating the truth of the origin of suffering. Then you can have a total freedom from suffering, which is he says he termed it as a truth of the cessation, meaning that a cessation of suffering, a cessation of the cause of suffering can be achieved. So that's why he's saying that Lam Gombacha. Means the truth of cessation is to be actualized. It is to be obtained. Understand that? Actualized or obtained. And it can be obtained. It is obtainable. Freedom is possible. We all can be free from the suffering as well as the cause of suffering. And then this is these are something then okay. Then the fourth truth, and then the truth of the path. And he says If you, then we would have a question, how, in what manner, in what way. Then he talks about the fourth truth, a truth of the path, or method that by which, by if you apply it or practice it or implement it, then you can achieve the truth of the cessation, meaning the freedom from suffering and their cause. So by these four noble truths, we have to understand I think especially in the first introduction of the Four Noble Truth, of course we cannot be totally so contented with temporary happiness, because although you are temporarily, you are healthy, you are wealthy, and powerful and all that, but they all are going to be changed. They won't remain intact or same in a way that you would expect or you would want or you would think. They all are subject to change. So you have to be prepared to face the actual reality, which is suffering. Sooner or later you will be aged, you will be sick, and then you will be dead. When you die, you enter into the unknown territory, right? Unknown world. You have, as a Buddhist, according to Buddha's discovery or discovery, is it discovery? He sees that this is not the one life to live. There is a life after this life, next life. So you are happy right now does not mean that you will be happy forever. So you have to be prepared. So if you need to go somewhere, if you want to travel to another country, you would want to know how to go there, how to get there, what is the situation there, what would you need to be able to get there and and stay healthy and have everything you need in comfort, can stay comfortable in all. You have to prepare, you have to have knowledge. So similarly, Buddha is saying that it's not the end of life. You will have a future life, so you have to be prepared. And the source of happiness that you are enjoying by which whatever your happiness you are enjoying is coming out of the sudden source of happiness that you have accumulated, but it will extinguish. It will come to end. It is extinguishable. So it is, so you have to accumulate more good merit by doing good deeds and develop wisdom continuously. That way you will continuously make no mistake that can lead you to suffering. So he's saying that this is so we have to, I guess, by studying and understanding intellectually at least the Four Noble Truth, we have to understand the suffering and real suffering that is obvious, and then suffering that comes about through the through the temporary happiness, and also the suffering that underlies within the suffering of change and suffering of suffering, or suffering, or the source of suffering, ultimate source of ultimate kind of like ultimate source of suffering, of the suffering of change and suffering of suffering, which is pervasive suffering. Because unless if you don't have this tangible, tender, very fragile, body, then we don't have to work too hard in protecting our body or protecting our health. Even today, in today's time, even little virus, the unseen virus that cannot be even seen, is torturing so much, it's torturing the whole world. So we can see how tough we are. we are really, that's giving us so much difficulty, challenge. And then then also we have to know that everything is caused by cause and condition. Our suffering is caused by cause and condition. Our happiness is caused by cause. Everything and wealth, everything is caused by cause and condition. And also so since suffering, all the suffering, the 3 types of suffering, or we have 6 types of suffering that we talked about, 8 types of suffering. All these are caused by cause and condition. So rely by understanding they are suffering and then understanding what are the cause of their suffering. You have to, in order to eliminate those suffering, you have to avoid accumulating the causes and conditions that create those suffering. And since happiness is also caused by causal conditions, so we have to, in order to experience happiness, and we have to accumulate those causes conditions. Does that make sense? This is a simple, very simple message, I think. And but we know but the problem is, I think we kind of intellectually understand that. Then we continuously make mistake in choosing the sole cause of suffering and cause of choosing the cause of happiness. We continue to make mistake even in terms of tiny little things. We still make mistake because lack of thinking, or I don't know.
Strong habit.
It's a habit, I guess. Yeah. So that we need. So the view here, I think, is that as a view as a Buddhist, we don't have to, as by knowing. For me, I don't have to feel depressed seeing suffering, because in my mind or in my view, I have planted the information that suffering can be eliminated, because it is caused by, it's not permanent, it's impermanent. So meaning impermanent means it is caused by cause condition, it is changeable, it is eliminatable, because it is caused by a cause condition. So that understanding, the knowledge gives me sense of what do you call that, relief, that if I want to, I can work on eliminating the cause of that suffering, and I can be free to, if it gets to the point I cannot tolerate anymore, especially, I can work on, although it is it is in general seen as a suffering of change, or brings temporary happiness. If I want to, I can eliminate the cause of that. I can detach way out. So if you know there's a way out, you don't have to feel depressed. Don't you think if there's a way out, then you don't have to feel depressed? If you are in the jail, let's say somebody in the jail, and then there's no way out at all, maybe he has a chance to be depressed. But if after some years, or if he can get out, or his term is over, then he can stay healthy, stay mentally, physically healthy, and then hope for the good, wait for the happy time when he get released, right? So similarly, although we are suffering temporarily, but if we continuously work, if we keep the idea or knowledge that view that that is temporary, it won't last too long, so there will be a happy time. So it will, it is for me it helps. Of course, it's wonderful if you can work on eliminating the causal conditions in the first place. That's wonderful. Although not, and then second thing also, that kind of or if there's no any way to avoid the suffering, or you have no other choice other than to experience suffering, as long as it lasts, then accepting it helps me. Like for me, allergy is it's gave me so much hard time because of having a big nose. I think, and of course it has to do with my karma as a Buddhist. I believe that, because not everybody is suffering like me. But today, you see me okay because I take the pill last night, so I'm okay. Otherwise, if I don't take pill, then I suffer.
Yeah.
I cannot go out much in the air. If I do, I try to work hard, face the challenge, and all that, but it's not working. So best thing I can do is stay home, and it comes, and I just accept it. And then I try to see my allergy as my life partner. so attached to me and never want to leave me. So I say, okay, here you're coming. Okay, enjoy yourself. so So when I have that view, maintain that view, it does not bothers me too much.
Right.
Otherwise, if you get so much, what you call that, fed up with that hatred, so much dislike or aversion, it will make your life for very miserable, I think.
Right. It'd be worse.
So it will make you feel worse. I mean, pain increases, pain or suffering get worse. So I chose to accept it and take it lightly and see it as like a friend who wants to visit me all the time. So, so that really helps for me. So I'm just sharing it. And something so as a Buddhist, we have to believe that our suffering, temporary suffering, can be eliminated for sure. It's impermanent. It can be eliminated. Also, in other words, we cannot just be free from suffering, but we can also be free from suffering of change. Also, we can be free from the pervasive suffering as well. That if we have that view, and then at least it gives me a relief, sense of relief. It makes me work harder. Sometimes of course I get lazy, but sometimes it makes me work harder as well. And what any question? Any question that you think? And then also that this is maybe, and so we have in for all these Four Noble Truths, they talk about 16 attributes. 16, each noble truth is they talk about attributes. So all those attributes are taught as an antidote to 16 different wrong view towards Four Noble Truth. So if I make it simple, the first one seemed to be the most profound for me. The first, especially is talk about the in relation to the truth of suffering. That is of contaminated aggregate is taken as an example. So it's our contaminated aggregate is seen as sometimes we unknowingly, I think. We tend to have an idea or notion or view that our body, we will, just if you are handsome or beautiful, healthy, strong, it will remain as it is, Although intellectually we have some idea, but, unknowingly we still tend to have what do you call it, subconscious mind, or, we tend to think that it will last like that. It will last as it is right now, continuously, or at least for some period of time. So with Tangjing law means view of seeing, in other words, it is maybe I can say grasping at our contaminated five aggregate as permanent. That makes sense. We tend to develop that notion, although it is not very obvious. It does not seem to be very obvious to us, or intellectually we may not even accept that I see that way because I know, but somehow we maintain that idea or notion or wrong view, or because of which we develop the grasping at our five aggregate as permanent, and that also triggers the negative emotion. That also notion serves as a source of our problem as well, a source of our wrong thinking and wrongdoing. And source, it also triggers negative emotions such as pride and ego and over attachment to our aggregates. And this is this is if you think of or remind yourself being impermanent, in the sense totally changeable, transformable, transient, and subject to this momentarily existence, and subject to change, and subject to get sick and die anytime, you will be totally different person. or we will be different person. We will be much kinder, much more nicer, much more thoughtful, and much more careful, especially in terms of uh, using our time, using our life, and also it would change our priorities
Yes.
as well. If you maintain or remind yourself you are impermanent, you know, and then you will cherish every single day that you have. You have life, the life that you have in your everyday life. You will cherish it more because knowing that you are still alive, it's a miracle. If you think deeply, as you know, especially like Professor Ryan, they are professor. They have so much information, knowledge, deep down into the body, how it thinks, how body is being maintained,
Right.
how it is operating. I don't have any zero now, but I can see that how this each of the lung organs of the body, how they are operating in some depending on so many things. They are very fragile. They are able to do their job depending on so many factors in each of them. How they are so much dependent on each other. So if you think about that, you can see how fragile our body is. It can be, it can go wrong anytime. So even so if you think more about this thing, and then we can appreciate our life more, everyday life. We can appreciate our everyday life far more than that we than in general,
Right.
than unusual. Otherwise, we take it for granted, and we get upset about so many little things that is actually, not a big deal at all, not really important as much as you think, not really matters to anybody as much as you think, but or you think that matters actually, but we think it matters so much, we make a big deal about out of it, and we get so upset about all tiny little things that does not work in a way we want them to work, and we would not be doing that. That will make us much more happier. We will become a person with more flexibility and uptight and easygoing. We will be more easygoing. We will learn. We will be somebody who take things easily. Like a young people have saying, I like that very much. Take it easy. First time I heard that, I was like, wow, he said very profound, take it easy. I really thought that take it easy. That made me feel like embarrassed. Oh, no, like maybe I'm taking it so seriously.
Right.
And that seriousness creates more stress by itself.
Right. Right.
Don't you think it's
Oh, yeah.
seriousness
Yeah,
itself
yeah.
takes so much stress in ourselves?
Yeah.
So when we take things lightly, lightly does not mean that we don't care about, but if it's we do your best, but if it works out in a way, it's wonderful. It does not work, that's okay,
Right.
because not everything can be fixable or can be fixed. That's the real. That's the nature of the life. I think there is no perfection. We are not living in a perfect world. It cannot be totally perfect. But having said that does not mean that we don't try to make it right or correct. But as long as we are within this cyclic existence or samsara, or dealing with the cyclic beings, samsaric beings, nobody is perfect. You cannot, and we ourselves is not perfect. We cannot expect others to be perfect. So if we understand that and see that from that window, then we will be able to understand and accept people doing things that is not really right in your understanding. It's okay. You can help them if they want. If they want to be corrected, you can share your thought that you think is correct. If they don't want to, that's okay. Let them go their way.
Right.
You cannot fix everybody at all.
Right.
Even though we had a lot of religious founders, and even including Buddha, he has not fixed everybody. We are still here making our mistake continuously with joyfully and happily every day.
Right.
We cannot fix, but we that's, I think that's that way. But of course we all do our best, but there are a lot of people that you cannot fix. People who wants to be fixed, then you can fix them. Fix them means you can try to fix them. You can help them as much as you can. But there are a lot of people, they don't want to be fixed. They don't care about what is right, what is wrong. They are happy with doing wrongdoings.
Yeah.
That's what you can say. You cannot do anything. Because when one day when they come out of that ignorance, that kept in that way, so then they will want to, they will seek help, and then if you happen to see that, you can help. Anyway, so this is these are something that we can pay attention to it, and something will change. What else? Any question? And also, yeah, mitakwa dungewa, also dungewa. Among the 4 attributes with regard to the 5 aggregates, first thing is, wrong view in relation to our 5 aggregates is grasping at the 5 aggregate as permanent. And as an antidote to destroy that, we have to remind ourselves that our aggregates, our body and mind is impermanent. So that's the antidote. So if you think about impermanent, that will destroy that wrong notion by which you develop the grasping at the body or mind as permanent. And then and then also our 5 aggregate body and mind is seen as by nature is suffering, but we tend to see it as a source of happiness. So that's why it is that wrong notion by which you see your 5 aggregate as happiness or source of happiness. It is that will keep you, how do you say, that will keep you in the dark, darkness. That will keep you in the darkness or deceptive, being deceived. That's the deception by which you won't be working for the greater good. Does that make sense? Yeah. In the sense, you won't be working for the to accumulate the source merits that can bring about happiness continuously in the future. Does that make sense? So it is according to Buddhist teaching, it is to be seen as suffering. 5 aggregate body and mind is to be seen as suffering or source of suffering. And then of course selflessness, self, body and mind is to be seen as not to be seen as what do you call this? Self being permanent, unitary, independent, all that, grasping at the self, body as permanent, independent, unitary, or you can say self-sufficient, substantially existing self. We don't want to develop that wrong notion or wrong view in relation to the body and mind. That is to be eliminated by the antidote, antidote which is selflessness of the person, or by the knowledge that, or wisdom that understand body and mind is being empty of permanent, unitary, and independent. And so these are also teaching in relation to our view, towards this, towards our body and mind, towards our aggregates. Then now true truth, and let me add a little bit of true truth. I've been talking, so I'm trying to say a little bit each time in the class, so that way I can go a little bit further. So true truth, last time I talked about the true truth posited by the Vivashika school. Today, if I talk about true truth posited by what do you call it? Sutra school. What's Swatantrika school? Swatantrika school. There's a two different, very tiny difference between the pronunciation of the Swatantrika and Swatantrika.
Right.
It seems like the Swa actually means, I think it's the one that is in the middle way, it's Swa. Swa actually in Sanskrit word, the Swam means self. Rang means self, Rangiba, Swatantrika. So Swa means self. So Swatantrika is a little bit different. So actually has to do with the sutra. So sutra. The sutra is actually not the English word. It's a Sanskrit word, sutra. And but that's the term being used even in English translation, sutra school. What English word? I don't think. Yeah, sutra school. Anyway, Swatantrika school is also a word, and that according to the school, that's very interesting. The way they posited true truth. For them, everything that you are seeing, all the functioning thing, all the impermanent thing, all the compounded phenomena, impermanent phenomena, are ultimate truth. All this, whatever you are seeing through your direct sense perception, I'm making it simple. That way you understand the point. Everything that we can see, hear, touch, and smell, taste through our five sense consciousness, through our direct perception, I have to say, remember direct perception. Sense and direct perception has difference. Direct sense perception, like a direct sense eye consciousness. Or you can also say valid direct sense eye consciousness, or ear direct sense consciousness, nose direct sense, tongue direct, body direct sense consciousness. Whatever is being experienced by these five direct perceptions, they can be seen as ultimate truth. Even in the definition, there's a dadon tokwe tapal matiba, rangi duli ngani repeat chesu tuwa means dadon tokwe tapal means it does not depend, their existence does not depend on labeling by name and conceptual thought, but something that exists from its own side. When you examine in terms of with regard to its existence, you can understand their existence through your direct, any of your five direct perception. You can understand their existence, such as everything we are seeing, hearing sound, smelling, you can experience their existence. You can apprehend their existence through your direct perception. All these are ultimate truth. In the sense they are ultimate, they are means they are ultimately functionable, ultimately functioning thing. So when they say ultimate truth, ultimate, they use the ultimate. Ultimate means tantam. Truth means damban. Here ultimate refers to the direct perception. Direct perception means but remember the definition, non-conceptual,
Right.
non-mistaken. Remember, this direct perception is understood as a non-conceptual and non-conceptual and non-mistaken. But our sense perception can be mistaken. But when it's not non-mistaken, it means direct term direct is added. All these direct perceptions are non-mistaken and non-conceptual. So, so these direct perceptions are understood as ultimate. Ultimate tamba means meaning. Tamba means the ultimate or the best meaning or highest meaning or pure meaning. Tamba actually means pure, ultimate, and correct and true. Tamba means meaning, perfect or perfect. Tamba means also can refer to perfect, true, pure, ultimate. In Tamba, in Tamba. So term means meaning. Tamba means these are real. That's what it means. All these you are seeing, the objects of our, in other words, objects of all the objects of our 5 direct perceptions are real. They are ultimate. They are ultimately real. They call ultimate because they are ultimately functionable, like a laptop. You don't need any. Their existence can be understood through reasoning. By touching, feeling, seeing nakedly. So ultimate it is truth to our. In other words, it is truth to our direct perception. It exists as per it appears to be existing according to our and they exist according to their existence is directly reflected or apprehended by our direct perception. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Amala.
Yes.
Amala, is this the same word as pramana?
Pramana.
Yeah,
Pramana is means sema. Pramana means
same.
is logic. You can say valid. We also use valid, valid, logic, logical, or
Correct perception.
perception. These are
No.
okay. Yes.
Okay.
Valid direct perception, or they also use the translation prime direct perception. Prime. They use either prime direct perception or valid direct perception, or prime, valid, and yeah, prime direct perception, valid direct perception. What else?
So according to Sautrantika, then they're saying direct, unmistaken. In the sense of unmistaken, does the Sautrantika school take into account that when my eyes see something, it appears to be permanent, but that perception is mistaken because we know, if I look at, say, for example, your face, I see your face. We understand that your face is an impermanent phenomena. So do they take, just on a very thin explanation is it's impermanent. So do they say me seeing your face is a direct, do they say that that's an ultimate truth?
I don't think like when you say things appear to be permanent, and that's they are not talking about they are whatever is being seen. When it comes to direct perception, they don't think.
I see.
Things are just reflected.
Okay, so it's almost like in that moment.
When thinking comes, thinking involves or plays the role only in terms of conceptual level.
Right.
Does it make sense?
Right. Yeah.
Only that conceptual thought is operating. So that's why we said that our senses consciousness are like a blind.
Right.
No, not the blind or what else? Yeah, Longwatabo. They cannot make the judgment. They can only see. They can witness.
Yeah.
In other words, their existence
Right.
as real.
Right.
They can witness things are functioning, operating.
How about, could you explain the difference between direct mental perception and the kind of mental perception that we normally think of where we're thinking? There is a direct mental perception.
Direct mental perception, I think, can be developed. We don't really develop that, I think, as far as I understand. Direct mental perception is something that is to be developed through deep meditation. Can develop at the time that when we get into deep meditation. We can say mental consciousness, but we can it can also have different layers of mental. But when we get to mental direct perception, it goes very it only or mostly only develops or comes to the surface when you are in deep meditation.
Mm-hmm. So as you say, our ear sense consciousness, our nose sense consciousness, our sense consciousnesses pick up things directly. They do not label them. There's no conception. They're just a direct experience.
That's my understanding.
But is it also the case that the mental perception will pick up a direct experience, but we immediately will cover it with concepts?
Yeah,
So
of course.
quickly.
It can. I think it can happen too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
So
can
that
happen too.
all of our various sense consciousness, including the mental, so there would be 6, including the mental, can pick up something directly, but what we do with our mental consciousness is we immediately, before we even recognize,
Yes, yes.
we immediately label it, define
Yes,
it.
of course.
It'll
There is
break
what you call when we're studying the mind and what is knowing mind, same mind and mental factor. So we can talk about how in what order the mind and mental consciousness and following the sense consciousness, how they arise one after the next. So if we study that text, we can have a rough idea about these things. These things happen so fast. It's not something that can be understood unless you go deep into your mind, and then we can kind of catch that, and notice that. Otherwise, in gross mental operation, it is hard to even notice for us.
very subtle.
Yeah, very subtle levels. But this is, of course, whatever they are saying is not completely correct.
So
It
don't
is
you
to
feel-
their based on their understanding. That's how they define. We have to understand them, their way of saying or defining ultimate to the convention in their from their perspective, and then then think about it, and then it also helpful. It also gives some kind of idea, So anyway, so they said that they talk about rangchen. Rangchen means generally characterized or specifically characterized phenomenon. So when we need to study, when we want to study the true truth posited by Sutra school, we need to understand the true term, generally characterized phenomena. Term that's said generally characterized phenomena, and specifically characterized phenomena. So generally, so when they give the example of the ultimate truth, they would say they talk about 6, at least in the text I see 6 different synonyms, same meaning, same meaning, like ultimate truth. They give the example for ultimate truth. They say ultimate, ultimate, yeah, they call it ultimate. And also they say generally characterized phenomena as an example. And they also use the example compounded phenomena, compounded phenomena. They also use the term impermanent. They also use the term Dhammaratrupa, means truly existence, true existence or truly existence. So as you know that these lower schools, Swatantrika school and Vaibhashika school, they accept the truly everything as truly existence, everything as externally existent. They do accept that. That's for fundamental view. According to their view, they accept this thing. But as you know, mind only school does not accept external object, and also mind only school accept truly existence to some extent, but Madhyamika school does not accept at all. No, they don't accept truly existing at all. But so these are the examples that they mention with regard to the ultimate truth. When it comes to the conventional truth, then they say that in other words, all the functioning thing, all the impermanent, all the compounded, they are ultimate truth according to the school. And like a generally characterized phenomena is also impermanent. In other words, it's impermanent. It's classified as impermanent phenomena as well. So then when they talk about ultimate conventional truth, they talk about this all the permanent phenomena. When they give the example, they give like a permanent, and also they use the term permanent as one example, and falsely existence as one example. Falsely and ultimate truth is two opposing factor, right? So falsely existence, and then also chitse means specifically, generally character. Earlier I made mistake. It's a specifically characterized phenomenon as this classified into a ultimate truth.
Oh.
I made the specifically. generally characterized phenomena is counted in as an example for the conventional truth. So and also uncompounded phenomena, like in the ultimate truth there's a compounded phenomena. Here the conventional truth uncompounded phenomena. Ultimate truth that in the ultimate truth they give the example ultimate or truly existence. Here they say falsely existence. So they are opposing, Then and also here they say compounded. Here say uncompounded phenomena. Here they say permanent, impermanent. Here there's a conventional. There's a permanent phenomena. So they are very total opposing. So these, in other words, roughly speaking, all the permanent phenomena are to be understood as conventional truth. All the impermanent phenomena or functioning phenomena are to be understood as ultimate truth because they are real. We can understand or witness their existence through our direct perceptions. We don't go into deep philosophy here. Okay, roughly, there's a good idea for us to at least have a rough idea of how they define ultimate truth and connection. It's for me, for the time being, it's very important for us to keep the main point. Otherwise, we mix up all the time. We get confused because we will have trouble making distinction between the views of different schools. Different school. So it's a good idea to have a different, the rough idea of each of them. Then when we read more deeper and think, then we can kind of come to a clear understanding. This is what why they are saying this and that, because they have their own reason, of course. If we go in, I'm hoping in the after some time we can talk more detail about this thing, especially what you call specifically characterized. This is very specifically characterized phenomena and generally characterized phenomena. We need to understand that more deeper. There is a lot of discussion about it, the difference between two and why they said what they're saying. So in the next coming classes, I will see if I can go more detail into that. And then so permanent. So in other words, conventional truth. When they talk of conventional truth, they said it's mental image, or what do you call that? Generic image, mental image. All these are labeled as conventional truth because this is something. It is not. This is something being labeled. That's right. Labeled by conceptual thought.
Right.
But it's not real. It's not functioning thing. It's just labeled. Everything that out there, they are functioning. You can witness they are usable. Right. You can witness they are usable. They are operational. But whatever you are thinking in your head, right. In relation to objects, or through their mental image, these are being created by or labeled by your conceptual thoughts. Your conceptual, your theory is not real because they cannot apprehend the object nakedly, right. like our direct perception can apprehend object. When they give the example, they say that if you are holding a dog with your own hand, it's like you're holding the dog nakedly or directly. That's why they call direct perception. But when you're holding on the dog with the rope, then it's like you're holding the dog through your direct conceptual thinking, through the rope.
Yeah.
So when you are thinking about object through your conceptual thought, you are thinking of the object not directly.
Yeah, right.
Not apprehended directly, but you are right. thinking of the object through your through the mental image of that object.
Sure.
Right.
So because of that, your understanding of the object is not clear. It's obscure.
Right.
It has been obscured. It won't have a clear understanding or image or reflection of the object because it is going through something. There's a medium.
Right.
There's a mental image. There's kind of like something that is in between. That's why you fail to understand the object as it is. And that's why whatever you are understanding through your conceptual thought is not real. It's not functioning. It's not functionable. Or that's what they are seen as conventional truth.
Right.
because they are not, also they are based, the way of their defining ultimate consciousness in whether object is usable or not, practically usable or functionable or not. That's how. So, but all these permanent phenomena are not functionable, not usable, not operative.
So that's why a generic image is considered permanent.
Yes, that's what they, because when the definition of their connection to this talk with TBCWP, it's just conceptually labeled.
Right.
It's a mere conceptually labeled. Nothing really. It's not really operational as permanent phenomena.
That's wild. We do that.
Impermanent
Everything.
phenomena. Yeah.
Everything we see, we're labeling. We don't even realize it. We don't realize what we're putting between us and the direct perception.
If we go deep into the, I need some kind of exercise in my head to be able to say that, and also need to prepare some more terms that I've been thinking. But hopefully in our next classes, I can say it a little bit, right? Because there are things that I have not said before. And also things that we haven't discussed, I think we haven't. So I'm thinking hopefully I can be prepared fully in my mind, mentally, in terms of terminology and usage and everything. And I can say it better, but I think I've roughly said it briefly, just idea. Next time.
I see a bit of a distinction. So you have conventional truth, you have ultimate truth. And the conventional truth you have is kind of what you see and label. Your sense consciousness observes the environment, the world around you. You interpret that with your mental consciousness and apply label. Sometimes I'm touching the dog directly. Sometimes the dog's on the rope. Both times it's a dog. I may not know the dog's heart is beating at 80 beats per minute on the rope, but if I touch the dog, I know the heart is beating 80 beats a minute. So, okay, I may not know it completely in the conventional sense. I understand that. But the ultimate truth I thought was that nothing really exists because of nothing is permanent, and therefore everything we see is not independently existing.
Yes, this is you're just right now you're mixing the view of the higher school and
Yeah,
also
so-
Lower school.
Yeah, this is
right
the
now
lower school.
you have to keep your mind. You must remember that we are talking about lower school. Of course, all these lower school have their own right and wrong things to say. They have certain things rightly, correctly, certain things they have said it wrongly, or they have made mistake in saying or defining or positing. So these are being rejected by higher school, and whatever is mistake they have made in terms of defining, understand things, they are being corrected by higher school, where you will see it more when. But I'm just trying to give you a certain important points to this seen as a, when they talk about basis, they always talk about true truth. So when we do the classification of the objects in general, they say permanent, impermanent, specifically characterized phenomena, generally characterized phenomena, compounded phenomena, uncompounded phenomena, and and they also they call it substantial existence, imputedly existence, substantially existence. This is also seem to be a very important point to be understood, especially when we're talking about truth of the Vibhashika school. Subsequently existence, substantially existence, they entire imputedly existence. If you understand this too, and it is it gets quite complicated as well. And also this when we're studying the truth to define opposite by Vibhashika school, we need to study that too. And when we talk of truth of the Sautantrika school, we need to understand this generally characterized phenomena and specifically characterized phenomena. And this is a lot of things being said regarding this thing in understanding. So it's quite a lot of talk that we need to do.
Yeah, Lama Passang, I remember that we were always confused for the first several years discussing the four schools of tenets. And I just gonna say this for everybody, that it's really hard to imagine for us as Westerners that you're talking about a Buddhist school of philosophy that is not, according to our lineage, seen as the ultimate fact. But it's still important to understand, even though the highest school, according to our lineage, says things are not as they describe it, we are instructed to still try to understand what they believe, even though it's not going to be the belief that we ourselves adopt. And that's kind of weird for Westerners. Westerners don't always spend time studying things that they're not meant to adopt as the truth.
Have a really, really good example of this in the West. If we just could make a comparison, it's like Sir Isaac Newton. There was a scientist centuries ago. Much of his information is valid. Then you have somebody like Albert Einstein who comes along, and there's new information laid on top of that. Some of what Sir Isaac Newton said is valid and true, but some is not, according to Einstein. Then you have quantum physics with Niels Bohr and those who followed him, which sort of cancels out some of the things that Einstein and Newton said. Yet we are very willing in science to follow this train and see the value of Isaac Newton, Einstein, Niels Bohr, and where quantum physics is going. We can see all of that. This is exactly what's happening with these schools of Buddhism and these tenets. And if we look at it that way, I think it's easier for us to sort of grasp and understand.
Yes, that's true.
It does.
Good point. Yeah, I think I just pointing out that for us as Westerners, we get easily confused because we're not, first of all, we're not that familiar with the fact that there are 4 schools of tenets, 4 different philosophical views to be studied. And so we think there's just one, it's Buddhism, you know? Right? And so what do you mean? Yeah.
Yeah,
With
yeah.
different views.
Sorry about my weird chat. While we were in class, I spilled a cup of tea on my computer and I was just cleaning it off the keyboard, and thus the weird, there might be some mystical significance to it, but you can get on that Brian Bales and see what you can decipher out of it. Anyway, I can't say that strongly enough. I just honestly, for us, like I said, we just go, well, what's Buddhism say? And, like Christopher's example is good. It'd be like going to the review of the progression of scientific thought in the West or something.
Also, the conventional, the way in which conventionally labeled, Taksam. This also differs the way in which it is defined by Sutra school and higher school. Taksam, the conceptually labeled. How how it is, how we conceptually label things also seem to be differences. But also in understanding, like a Vaibhashika school, when they talk about ultimate truth and conditional truth, the way in which they examine, when which they define ultimate truth as something for them. This also, their way of defining this ultimate truth also has to do with their view that they have in relation to how things exist, whether they exist from its own side or not, whether they are externally, whether externally existing things really exist or not. But in this lower school, they all accept that. They all accept things really do, external existence really does exist. It's like us. We think everything they is out there physically.
Right.
It exists. It's just real. So their fundamental notion or understanding of things, that they do exist from its own side. That's why based on that, they define the truth. They talk about this is truth, this is not truth. So, and also when they talk about Vaibhashika's ultimate truth, they in their understanding of truth, in terms of mind can be mentally we can break our mind into pieces, into so many different moments, piece in the sense, so many different moments of its existence, its operation. Right. So that's how they finally, it's to be, that kind of investigation is to be done through our mental exercise, through mentally, and then they just kind of conceptually or mentally, then they kind of define the subtlest, partless mind or consciousness, and that they say that that can be understood as ultimate truth, because it won't it still can maintain its identity. It's still it's from that point it cannot be changed. It will maintain its it will be able to maintain its identity, such as which is consciousness or name, that label. So, and also in the case of the form or physical thing, when we talk about things, we can also, when we talk about things, we can say physical and non-physical. Everything that exists is either physical or non-physical, right? That's how we make the division. Is it right? That's how, like, either permanent or impermanent, either compounded or uncompounded. Like, so also we can say either physical or non-physical. That's how we say how in the philosophy, different distinction. Of course, we can say this is tree, this is rock, this is metal, so on. But in general, this is it's all physical,
Right.
and then non-physical.
Right.
Non-physical means mind. Mind is considered as non-physical. It's not visible.
Imaginary.
Yeah. So when they talk of physical thing, then they finally break into pieces. This is something can be done to to hammer and any kind of tools that you have, and break into pieces. Then Chinese get them. Then this is ultimate truth, because it also it can still maintain its identity or label, which is such as its label form. It still remains as form. Although it is tiny beneath, but its label, which is label of which is form, it still maintain that. So that's why it can still be identified as form. That's why it is ultimate truth. So when we then also, in other words, this is also talking about when we are searching for self. Where is self? Self is being searched by searched through our parts of body, through body. Is it in the mind? Is it in the body? Which part of the body? And so when the body, so self is not found. So the way in which they are finding the ultimate truth, it kind of helps. It's kind of quite a bit of similar in the way that it is the self is being searched, by higher school, in terms of when they try to pinpoint self, it cannot be found. Within the body, it cannot be found within the mind. So that's why it's selfless, but self still exists. Self is, just a mere, because lower school, lower school, like, as we have studied before, when they pinpoint the self, they talk about they say collection of the five aggregate is self, or continuation of the body and mind is self, or some say mental consciousness is self. Some they say, what do you call them? Guishi, mind basis of all is referred to as self. But the higher school said that all these are being posited by the lower school. Such as even the Prasangika, Swatendra Madhyamika school as well. But only the Prasangika, it's just a mere label. And self does exist, but it exists only in dependence on body and mind. It's just a conceptual level, but it does exist. It exists conventionally, nominally. That makes sense. I think the term only used to be nominally existence, conventionally existence.
So
Merely by name, it's just a. This is needs to understand. When you think about these things, you need to think about their term that is dakshi. Dakshi means basis of imputation.
Yeah, right.
And imputation is self.
Mm-hmm.
And then also when we develop the misconception in terms of the mode of the existence of self, then that what do you call it? Daksha means object of negation. So we have to be able to make the distinction between the object of negation and Gakcha and Gakshi, basis of the object of negation.
Yeah. Right.
Basis, you understand?
Yes. Yes.
So what we are trying to do in this, in our study of the emptiness is, we are trying to remove the object of negation, which is the basis of our misconception, from the object of negation of the basis. That makes sense?
Let's take an example. I don't know if people can see there are deer out behind you.
Yeah.
So the deer would be the basis of imputation. We impute onto what we see of those moving animals. We label them deer, animals,
Yes,
wild.
yes.
Those are the basis
Of the
imputation.
Yeah, yes.
In that case, what would be the object of negation there?
Object of negation, of course. Here we are not rejecting or refuting the deer. We are refuting how, in what manner the deer exists. So in tenets and the Buddhist fourth school of thought, there's a object of negation is like a truly existent is object of negation, independently existence is object of negation, inherently existence is object of negation, and self being permanent, self being seen as permanent independent unit is object of. These are what? These are something we have conceptually labeled that does not really exist there. That does not exist even as a characteristic of the object. They are just totally labeled. The object does not possess these things, but we have just labeled them. So that's why we are not able to see the object nakedly as it really exists. So we have to remove these things, this misconception. So okay, it's very it's good for us to understand misconception, misconceiving, and what is being misconceived, and Zimba Shamba, and how it is being clinging, like apprehending, clinging, and then accordingly misconception that is being developed based on clinging and apprehending, and what is being misconceived.
So are we negating the fact that the deer exist at all?
No, we are negating the qualities or the manner of which how the deer existence.
How it exists.
The way we think.
The way we think is existing. That is to be removed. They call it gakcha means object of negation. Gakshi is deer. So in other words, we are not eliminating or denying the deer. We are denying how the deer is seen as exist. Makes sense?
Yeah.
But they still exist.
They exist.
Yes.
We are not,
Yes.
that's what I'm saying. We are not denying
They
or
exist.
rejecting or refuting the existence of deer itself. But we are denying or rejecting or refuting the way in which deer is seen as exist.
Yeah.
Makes sense?
Why are we doing this?
That's a very good question.
Yes, that's because when we misunderstand in that respect, we develop wrong notion.
I see, okay.
We develop it's coming out of ignorance.
Yeah.
It's not the correct understanding. Because it's not a correct understanding because there does not exist in a way we think it exists, and because of that wrong view or wrong understanding, we develop wrong idea. We make mistake in terms of dealing with deer emotionally. It's also it develops triggers wrong expectation, wrong understanding, everything wrong. Everything we think of deer becomes wrong
Right.
because we have misunderstood it.
But
How
we don't know, but we, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. So we've misunderstood it. We've put all of these well, labels, or we've imputed in our own mind what we
Yep.
think is real versus not real. So even if we negate in that